Hello everyone and welcome to Makai-World Reviews. This is episode number 91 of this illustrious show, and I'm of course the Tona Makai, Master of Minds and Men. We are going to boldly go where, well, many men have gone before, reviewing Star Trek movies, and we are now on Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home, or you may know it as the one with the whales. So let's go ahead and not beat around the bush too much more, hit that subscribe button, and we'll move on right to the movie. Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home, directed by Leonard Nimoy. Back in directing seat is Spock himself. I think I've pretty much said all I can say about Mr. Nimoy. A classic actor with a classic voice who was pretty much universally loved. Once again, the legend of Bobo Baggins notwithstanding. Written by, this has 4 writers on it: Steve Mearson, Peter Crikes, Nicholas Myers, and Harve Bennett. It's too many writers for one movie. Too many cooks for just one broth, and I think very telling of what kind of mess we might be getting into here. Starring James Doohan, Scotty, no, not Welshie, man with a wide and varied television career that took off big time after Star Trek, because of Star Trek, of course, propelling him into the hearts and minds of countless fans for his gruff, agitated ways. And George Takei, the voice of an angel and the man who strives a lot to help the gay and Asian American communities. He might be the most successful member of the original Star Trek cast, keeping busy up until this day, usually in the vocal capacity. When was the movie released? It was November 26, 1986. And what came out the same week? Solar Babies. A poor science fiction movie that unfortunately released on the same day a Star Trek movie did. Though even if it was released another day or month, it would still be an absolute stinker. Richard Jordan and Jamie Gertz's best work. It is not. And The Mosquito Coast, a forgettable Harrison Ford vehicle about a man who moves to the jungle to make a town in his own vision. Not a particularly interesting movie, and honestly sort of flat and bland. I wouldn't say it's Mr. Ford's best either. Moving on to the plot, Starfleet encounters a strange, destructive probe that looks like Ranma from the aforementioned Arthur C. Clarke book. And not only is it heading towards Earth, but it's also sending an undecipherable message out. The Klingons are mad as well about Kirk's handling of Courage in the last movie. Please check out my review of that one, and the previous 2 as well. And have petitioned Starfleet Council for Kirk's extradition, though thanks to Spock's father, Starfleet pretty much says they will handle these things internally, like a horrible college. The Klingons swear revenge, like they're wont to do. The Enterprise crew at this time is still on Vulcan, recovering and alive and doing pretty well. Spock, they decide to return to Earth to deal with the consequences of their actions. We have Kirk, Spock, Bones, Chekhov, Sulu, and Uhura, and their stolen Klingon bird of war ship. So they head off towards Earth, but run afoul of the Cylinder ship, which has Earth pretty much locked down. But thanks to some smart work, the Enterprise crew figures out the signal they are sending is for a humpback whale, which are long extinct. So they decide to go back in time and get some whales, so, the ship doesn't blow up Earth. So after a vaporwave video interlude, they go back in time. Thankfully, their ship has a good cloaking device, and then everyone splits up to go about their shtick. Scotty and Bones head to a polymer manufacturer to get a specifically made tank for the whales. They trade specs from their time for it. Sulu gets a helicopter to take it to the ship. Uhura and Chekhov, after some confusion, find the Almeida naval base and attach a device to one of their nuclear vessels to steal the energy for their ship. The military gets pretty mad about this. Uhura escapes. Chekhov is injured, but thanks to Bones' quick thinking and medical know-how, he is saved from the local hospital before further damage can be done. Spock and Kirk go to find the whales. They also find a woman who takes care of said whales, Dr. Gillian Taylor. She becomes engrossed in the goings-ons of these 2 weirdos and helps them procure the whales, going back to the Star Trek future with them and said whales. The whales answer the Cylinder ship's call, which seems to satisfy it. The biggest punishment Kirk gets is a demotion from Admiral to Captain, something he is very happy with. Gillian helps take care of the whales in the future. Spock and his dad have a nice conversation, and the whole crew checks out the brand new Enterprise and are going to take it out for a test drive to end the film. I remember thinking this movie was stupid, and it kind of is. For rewatching it, I enjoyed the hell of it, like the hell out of this movie, like a lot more than I thought I was. Let's talk about why. Directing and cinematography. After the swing and miss that Mr. Nimoy had last movie, I think he finally found his stride, and who knew it would be with a comedy angle, the funny slant this movie had. Its light tone and less action-based direction, the more character-driven plot, was a lot more entertaining than it had any right to be. I've said before that Star Trek works better when it's presented as something where the action is only there when necessary, as a last resort. We want to deal with the problem in a forward-thinking, positive way, and this did that. So yeah, this movie was completely handled correctly here, and that includes the cinematography. I mean, the fish out of water story, pun intended, this movie was kind of gave them an out for needing to have a lot of Star Trek sets. There was some, and they all looked fine, less silly this time around costume-wise. But most of it was the 80s, and that wasn't really a stretch to do. So yeah, wins on both fronts, and they certainly leaned into their strengths. The acting was also pretty good here. It wasn't anything revolutionary, and it certainly wasn't anything with any real pathos or gravitas, but everyone was entertaining. Like I said, this movie was a lot lighter, and the acting reflects that, but a real positive was there was a lot of moments to shine for the ensemble cast, which if you watch any of my reviews, you know I'm a fan of. Scotty and Bones at the polymer place was money, where they give them the specs for clear aluminum. First off, Scotty trying to use the Apple II was hilarious. He tries to talk into the mouse, computer. But after that, when Bones is like, we could be altering the future, Scotty says, why? How do we know he didn't invent the thing? This is great. Of course, we get Chekhov and his nuclear vessels. Bones constantly critical of the local medical facility and the tools. They were a lot of fun. But by and far, Spock and Kirk had the best stuff, with Kirk doing things like trying to convince Jillian that Spock is a burnout from the 60s, having done too much, as he says, LDS. Just all of the, stupid, quirky future people not knowing what's going on stuff was good. I also want to say, I wanted to see more of Starship Saratoga. They seem awesome, and I want to know more about them. They were at the very beginning. So yeah, the acting was good enough, and I think everyone got something out of the script, save probably Jillian, who comes off as a fairly generic 80s kind of, I'm half useful, really just here for the main character to have a chick to interact with sort of vibe. Now, I do have a gripe or two, as is expected. The Klingons were totally wasted. What the hell was the point of them being mad? It went nowhere. It was nothing. Maybe it'll pay off in the next movie, but as far as this one, they literally had one scene where they were like, we're going to do something, and then they did nothing. Beyond that, okay. Like, as I've said, I'm a Star Trek fan, but I'm hardly a huge fan, and I don't know a ton about the lore, but time travel seems like a frequent thing in the history of Star Trek. Of course, I've seen episodes of the original and Next Generation where they dealt with time travel, and in conjunction with that in here, it's very sloppy how time travel is dealt with. It's also so casual. Like, first off, no one in Starfleet can figure out the whales are what the aliens want to talk to, but Kirk and Uhura can do it in 30 seconds. Fine, whatever. And then Spock is like, let's just go back in time. And no one finds this stranger out of line. They can do this anytime. And it's that easy to go back and forth. And Jillian can just go to the future and live there with no issues. Okay. It was really messy, but I guess that's part of the franchise. So I can't really complain too much about it. I guess I'm just more of a stickler for my time travel. As far as the soundtrack goes, I expected the general Star Trek stuff we had been getting, that has waxed and waned, but essentially not changed too much. But we got a few different things here. We got the Star Trek score portion, more classical, it felt more orchestral, almost lighter, but compelling. And it kicked off right when the movie started. It captured my attention with this sort of almost fun but heavy thing right off the bat. Then it moved to the 80s, and we got this sort of funky jazz beat for San Francisco. I would have liked more maybe contemporary music used, 80s music, but I imagine licensing issues probably weren't worth the effort, to be frank with you. Overall, I always kind of saw this movie as the whale movie, that joke, but it wasn't. It was actually a lot of fun. It was far more entertaining than it had any right to be. I think it actually was a fairly good Star Trek story. It was far more worthy of a film than the last movie, which felt just like an extended episode. I like when they do something different. I like when they put the effort into making it an event and not just, here's more Star Trek, and thus, like the first movie and third movie did, while 2 and 4, this one, tried to do something special, an event kind of thing. So yeah, if you're looking for a light, fun Star Trek movie that has a good sense of humor, this is definitely the one. As usual, I'd probably have a few drinks with it, take your humor to a different level. Well, that was the penultimate movie in this month's selection with Star Trek: The Voyage Home. If you could time travel, where would you go? What would you do? Let me know down below. Don't forget to make sure to support this channel on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Add me on Instagram under Demon Peaks for daily Twin Peaks memes. My podcast is still out there, the Dark Peaks Podcast. And finally, subscribe. Do that first and come back next week for the final movie in my Star Trek retrospective, Star Trek: The Final Frontier. This has been the Tony Makai. Thank you very much, and goodbye.